Okay, so what did I learn? Basically, as far as the paranormal phenomenon or UFO phenomenon, I think I would say that as far as the response that I got from that most atheists would feel like, well, there's not enough evidence to say that any of those things are true, but there were some that were a little bit more open-minded and said, well, I don't write off the whole idea, especially as far as UFOs or other life forms or whatever. But, moreover than that, I think what I learned is that there are some atheists who, I've always admired as far as their, intelligence and their, even their humor and things like that, that are really just not even open to the idea of theorizing or speculating about these types of things, or maybe anything, for all I know at this point. And you know who you are. And I just think that I guess that has become like a bigger thing than the original question I was asking, which was just a question, by the way. I never asserted that I believed in those things. I never was trying to argue that those things do exist, but just trying to argue the fact that it's not something that should just be written off. I think that there's enough stuff out there, even though it's anecdotal, that I think, in my opinion, and that's all I was really giving was my opinion, that it's worthy of looking into or studying. And when I started thinking that well, maybe I need to research this stuff, because I never, I wasn't trying to suggest that other people should research this for me or whatever, but I thought, it's possible that other people had something or knew of something that maybe I didn't at this point. Very possible. I was really just wanting opinions about the phenomenon, specifically from atheists. But nonetheless, when I started thinking about, okay, well, how would one research this? Especially somebody like me. I don't have the money to buy fancy equipment. What kind of equipment would you buy? What kind of tests would you do regarding these things? It depends on what your theory is of what these things are to begin with. So a lot of whatever evidence I could ever say was evidence, obviously could be argued. It's kind of the same thing as far as people saying, oh, well, I can prove that there's God, or I can disprove God. I mean, the things that we have that we use to disprove the existence of God, I think a lot of times is, the contradictions within religions, within their doctrines, the motives that we can see, are used, or the motives or reasons behind why religions exist, where they started in the first place, and the human tendency to need a sky daddy or what have you, or to control other people. I mean, there's a lot of reasoning behind it, but then most of us will say, well, you can't disprove it any more than you can prove it, so therefore it's just a claim, but there's no evidence to support it. That's usually what we say. And that's the same thing about, obviously, as far as the ghost phenomenon or the alien phenomenon. But I guess what I find that's contradictory, or maybe even hypocritical, is that you don't have thousands of people going around claiming that they've seen God and that they have video footage of it or photographs of it, or anything that might be credible. I'm not saying that these things, this footage of UFOs and stuff, is credible, but there are documentaries that I've pointed out where there are scientists that are saying that the idea that there's other intelligent life is very probable. These people are smarter than me, and probably smarter than anybody who would laugh about it or make a joke out of it, which, whatever, you're entitled to your opinion. But, when I did this video, I was kind of surprised, in a sense, that, certain atheist people, anybody that's been following this probably knows who I'm talking about, because there was other videos that were kind of responses to this, but weren't really done as responses, but were regarding a response to my question, in a sense that, and the first one that came out was kind of almost mocking me or whatever, but I thought it was funny. I was kind of, thought it was funny. There's a picture of E.T. behind me while I was asking. I knew that people would say that it's crazy and make jokes and say whatever, but so what? It's funny. I'm not going to get all pissed off or whatever, but, that person that made that video, who is so, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, dogmatic, and I'm saying it now based off their actions and things that they said. So there's your evidence. Made assumptions about what I was saying. You know, I mean, look at the video that I made. Where in it did I say that I believe 100% that ghosts and aliens exist? In fact, I said the exact opposite. Hang on. Sorry, I had a phone call. So anyway, like I was saying, you know, I said the exact opposite, but the point is that assumptions were made about things that I was saying. And I think it's ironic that, you know, somebody who is making the case that, you know, the stuff about paranormal and aliens, there's no empirical evidence, and show me the evidence, show me the evidence. Well, for one thing, I wasn't making any claims, which I was accused of that, never did it. So where was your evidence on that? And, you know, making all these assumptions. Well, you know, we all know what assumptions are. There's no evidence on those. That's just, you know, an opinion. You know, I initially I found it kind of shocking that, you know who you are. You couldn't even speculate or give an opinion on these things because, oh, well, where's your proof? Where's your proof? And I'm not going to speculate on something that doesn't. Well, okay, that you made your point. All you had to do was say, well, I don't believe in those things because there's no evidence. You could have just left it at that. That's all I was asking for, is what people, you know, who are atheists feel about these things. You could have just said that and it been all done. But no, you made a video and it was kind of mocking me. But like I said, I took it in stride. I thought it was funny. I'm not, you know, pictures of E.T. behind my head, whatever. I don't, you know, I expected that. But I don't have such a fragile ego that I'm going to, you know, block you, which is basically what ended up happening. You ended up blocking me and, you know, taking your video down and everything. You know, a lot of people discussing this stuff. And just in the middle of the whole thing, you just blocked me and that's it. You know, you're going to take your toys and go home. All because of the fact that, you know, you said things, you know, I pointed out that documentary about UFOs or whatever, so you made a video about that, and we're basically talking about how ridiculous that was, or, you know, saying what your opinion was about that, and I was responding to what you were saying in that video and pointed, like, you made the point that, you know, there are no other, they haven't found any other planets that support life, and so I pointed out, well, they have recently said that they found one that supports life, and I, you know, gave the link to it or the name of the YouTube video where it was on the news or what have you. And, you know, but like, again, there was all these assumptions and assertions of what I was saying, even though they weren't what I was saying. And, you know, telling me that that I'm, if I want to believe in these fantasies or whatever, and kind of making the implication or whatever that, you know, if people disagree with me, then I get all upset. Well, I wasn't getting upset if people disagree with me. I was just making the point that, you know, I think that these are valid things to look into and research. That's my opinion about it, and I think that until we know definitively that they're not true, that we should be open to the ideas that maybe there is something to it, and maybe it's not so much that they're ghosts or that, you know, they're these fictional things that we have decided they are. Maybe there is something scientific to it. I don't think that that's a terrible thing to do, and I don't think that that means that I'm believing in fantasies or myths without evidence. It just means that I'm saying, you know, what are your opinions about it? You know, without the evidence. Yeah, there's no evidence to prove those things. I never said there was. What, as atheists, do you think about these things? What is your opinion? And plenty of atheists were able to do that and have me even maybe argue some of the things that they were saying or point out other things without getting offended. Yet you, and you know who you are, were not able to do that. And got all offended when I asked you, you know, don't you think you're being dogmatic about this? And that was a question, and that was, you know, said, you're kind of being dogmatic about this, don't you think? I said something along those lines. And what did you say to that? Your response to that was, well, if you're going to call me dogmatic, then I'm not going to be nice anymore. You're being just as dogmatic and closed-minded as religious fanatics are. I'm sorry, but that's how you are. And obviously, now that you've pulled your videos regarding this and blocked me, and, you know, so I'm assuming, you know, I think all your comments are gone and everything, so there's no evidence that anybody said anything bad about you, or that maybe you were called on certain things as far as assuming things and I don't know, believing in fantasies, like the fantasy that I said that these things were true. You don't want anybody to see that, so you just pull all that stuff. And I think that's very credible evidence that you are very dogmatic and you're overly skeptical and very closed-minded. And I'm very shocked because, I was a big fan. And like I said, I thought you were very intelligent and a great atheist, very famous here on YouTube. And I was honored that you were even discussing this with me or other people. I thought that was cool. But, you just get all pissed off because you get so defensive about this, like you're just, how dare I even ask the question? How dare I even assume these things or theorize about these things? And like I said, I never said that these things were true. I never said I had proof, because of course that was the first thing that you came up with is, well, where's your proof? When you have proof, let me know. And then you asserted that I was expecting other people to do my research for me. Never was expecting that. And I even said, I plan on doing the research, but the more this went on, the more I started thinking, what would actually be actual, credible evidence for these kind of things? What kind of tests would you do, as I said earlier? And what would people who are highly skeptical actually believe as evidence? And I think it's no different than God. He'd have to come down, and I've said it myself, and I feel the same. I mean, even if some supernatural entity came down, called himself God, and started doing miracles, I've said it in other videos, you can look, that, even then I might question it. So I understand skepticism. I understand and I agree with the need for having evidence for things. But, to not even be capable of having a discussion about it without, being overly defensive and making assertions and being very dogmatic about, oh no, these things just can't exist because you don't have evidence and nobody else have it. And maybe they don't. I never said that they don't exist. I never said that they do either. But, to get as defensive as you did and take your toys and go home, I think that was childish. And I think that basically just proved the point that you assumed I made. I asked you if you thought you were being dogmatic, and you get all insulted by it and tell me, well, if you're going to call me dogmatic, then I'm not going to be nice to you anymore. Well, then don't be nice to me. Pull your videos. Block me if that makes you feel better. But all it does is prove my point. that that there apparently are atheists out there that are closed-minded, and that apparently that's your particular opinion on this issue. But I don't think it was necessary to drive it home in this fashion. Like I said, all you had to do was say, I don't believe in those things because I don't feel like there's evidence. Okay, and then I might have retorted with, well, what about this or what about that? And you could have said, well, I don't feel that that's evidence. Okay, because that's the conversation I had with other atheists went just like that. They didn't get offended. They didn't get pissed off. They didn't, none of that. And, I disagreed with some things that they were, writing off or whatever, because I thought, again, that they were being kind of closed-minded and was basically just having a conversation with people about these things as far as, okay, well, why do you think that this isn't evidence? What would it take for you to believe this stuff? What would be evidence in these kind of things? What would be a credible source for information on these things? It's called a conversation. So, I think that you need to do some kind of inner soul searching to kind of decide, if you weren't being dogmatic and if you don't feel that, you're closed-minded on this kind of stuff whatsoever, and you get so insulted if somebody even in your mind implies this about you, why do you suppose you felt the need to go to the drastic measure of removing your video that you made and blocking me just because I was basically calling you out on the fact that you were assuming things and asserting things about what I was saying that I did not say? And we have proof of that. And then at the very end, right before you pulled everything, you said that, something about me being a silly person or a strange person. Well, how am I strange? Just because I asked a question? Okay. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I guess that's what I learned. I learned that there are some atheists that are open-minded about other things that have yet to be proven or haven't been proven yet. And there's some atheists who apparently are so fragile with their egos or so arrogant that if anybody even implies that what they're saying isn't true, then they just are going to slam the door on them. But you're not dogmatic, You're not closed-minded. No, not at all. I say let the evidence speak for itself.